From middle school teacher to an inmate at the county jail. That's the trajectory for this one-time gym teacher, now accused of a year-long relationship with her teenage student. Prosecutors say they had sex in her car, at her home, and even in the school locker room. If that wasn't jarring enough, wait until you hear what happened when the student broke up with the teacher. This is Scandal, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Teresa Gillespie. There's a lot to cover in today's case, but here are the highlights just off the top. A middle school gym teacher is accused of having sex with a student in the school. She's accused of a relationship that lasted for more than a year, during which time she took this student to and from school every day and allegedly sent nude pics back and forth. And then when the student broke up with her, she allegedly began stalking the kid, driving by their house just to get a glimpse of them. That's just an overview. The nitty-gritty details are even more shocking than all of that. So let's jump right into it. Today's scandal takes us to Highlands Ranch, Colorado. It's a community just about 20 miles south of Denver. Highlands Ranch is the home of Ranchview Middle School, where some of the alleged crimes actually took place. And it's also where today's scandal guest went to middle school, but we'll get to all of that in just a minute. Now, in recent years, Teresa Whalin has worked as a gym teacher at Ranchview Middle School. And according to court documents, she recently overstepped her role as a teacher and veered into illegal and immoral conduct. So here's what happened. Last week, a student came forward to their school counselor. Now, this student had been receiving some really weird texts from a number that they did not know. These messages were really scary and harassing to the student, so they decided to come forward and report them. And it was also at this time that the student decided to report something else too. While with the counselor, Redacted, meaning the student, was discussing the bothersome text message and decided it was time to report Teresa for her inappropriate actions. The student knew the relationship with Teresa was not appropriate and spoke about Teresa, telling Redacted not to tell anyone, so Teresa didn't get into trouble. Now, let me pause really quick to explain a couple of things. First, the student's name and their gender have been redacted from court documents just to protect their privacy. So to respect all of that, I'm going to do the same. You're not going to hear the name or the gender. But secondly, this is a bombshell allegation, right? A gym teacher, Teresa Whalin, had been in a relationship with a student and had specifically told this student not to tell anyone because she could then get in trouble. So on November 10th, this counselor reported all of this information to a school resource officer, who then relayed the message to a Douglas County Sheriff's deputy, and from there, an investigation began. Now, law enforcement sat down with the student who recounted all of this. They told detectives that Teresa had been their middle school gym teacher. During the 2023-2024 school year, the student had started to experience some mental health issues, and they were even engaging in self-harm. They were cutting. And it was Teresa who first noticed all of this. Teresa noticed the student's wounds from cutting and talked with them about their mental health struggles. Teresa never reported the student's self-harm and instead became someone the student trusted. The bond between Teresa and the student increased, and they developed a relationship with one another. And once again, I have to pause. I want to say, teachers are mandated reporters. That means they're required to report if a student is in any harm. And in this case, the student was clearly struggling with their mental health if they're cutting. So it was Teresa's literal job to report this and to get them help. The court docs literally say the student was looking for support during that time, and instead, Teresa allegedly ignored all of that and started hanging out with the student more and more, mostly in her office, which, by the way, was located inside of the school locker rooms. The student told law enforcement that by April of 2023, the relationship had progressed and become sexual. They allegedly had sex multiple times and exchanged explicit and naked photos via Snapchat. Redacted said their sexual relationship lasted more than a year, and they often repeatedly engaged in sexual activities during that year. The student described the relationship with Teresa as dating and spoke about going out to eat on dates. Redacted stated that they and Teresa hung out in Teresa's office located inside the redacted locker room at the Ranchview Middle School after school. The student described the office to include the bathroom where they often together engaged in sexual activities. But that so-called relationship was more than just physical or sexual. According to court documents, Teresa drove this student to and from school almost every day. The student said Teresa picked them up and dropped them off around the corner from their home, and their parents did not know about their relationship. Teresa drove the student to and from school for most of their relationship. But things did eventually change. That's when the student became interested in dating one of their classmates, a peer. So the student told investigators that they broke up, quote unquote, with Teresa, and her reaction was shocking. Redacted described being manipulated by Teresa, which is how their relationship was allowed to progress. The student told someone else that they and Teresa had sex in Teresa's office at school, in Teresa's car, and they had sex at Teresa's residence located in Centennial, Colorado. When the student started talking to another student, Teresa became jealous and accused the student of cheating on Teresa. And then Teresa allegedly took it to another level. Teresa struggled with the breakup and continued to drive near the student's home and in their walking path to and from school. The student described fearing Teresa and felt like Teresa was following them to the point where they tried to find alternatives for getting to and from school, and they spoke about changing their route to avoid seeing Teresa. In August of 2023, Teresa just showed up at the student's house, unannounced, unwanted. So the student told her to go away, leave them alone, but Teresa allegedly just kept trying to talk to them and get the student to come into her car. Now, things really escalated in September 2025, and that's when the student started getting those harassing texts from the unknown number. And that's when the student decided, okay, it's time to report all of this to a school counselor, and that came in November of this year. Now, this next part is so important. When the student reported all of these allegations, they were specific. Teresa allegedly knew what she was doing was wrong. Teresa was controlling and manipulative and would tell the student not to tell anyone about their relationship. The student believed this was because Teresa knew it was illegal to be in a relationship with a student. Now, after getting all of this information from the student, detectives knew that it was time to speak to Teresa, so they went to her house. According to court documents, Teresa's mom answered the door and, quote, demanded to know why they were there. So when Teresa came outside, she admitted she did know the student. And at that point, Teresa's mom allegedly asked, does my daughter need a lawyer? So the cops in the scene are like, I don't know, we can't give you legal advice. This is your choice. So her mom said, okay, Teresa, let's go. You're done. You shouldn't be talking to them. And as Teresa started walking away from police officers, they told her she was under arrest and she was being detained. According to court documents, Teresa later changed her mind and told detectives, okay, I'll speak with you. And per the affidavit, she fessed up to almost everything. Teresa admitted to being in a sexual relationship with a student for 14 months. Teresa described exclusively dating the student. Throughout the interview, Teresa often stated she knew this was wrong and illegal because the student is a minor and Teresa is an adult. Teresa spoke about the student manipulating her and Teresa feeling trapped in the relationship because she was trying to keep the student's mental health safe. Teresa said she is remorseful and knows her family will not understand the situation. Teresa accused the student of controlling her and getting mad if Teresa went out with friends or family. Now, in this interview, Teresa also admitted she had sex with a student in her car, and she admitted she saw the student every single day driving them to and from school. And she also talked about the quote-unquote breakup, saying, quote, Teresa didn't understand why and struggled with not being involved with the student. Teresa admitted to repeatedly going to the student's home in an effort to catch a glimpse of them. So for all of this, Teresa Whalin was charged with sexual assault on a child, position of trust, internet sexual exploitation of a child, and stalking repeatedly. She was booked in jail in Douglas County, Colorado, and is being held on $50,000 bond. Okay, so now everyone is up to speed on this really shocking case, and we can take a deeper dive into what all of it means. And for that, we're going to bring on today's expert guest. It's criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis. What's interesting, Eric, you're actually from Colorado. You went to this middle school, Ranch View Middle School. And okay, I'll give you a little insight into how I work as a reporter. I jot down notes of what I want to talk about. And my first note is you went to the same middle school. And then I literally wrote, a middle school gym teacher is accused. So what are your thoughts on that? A middle school gym teacher? I mean, tell me what you're thinking.
Oh gosh, it's just sort of with the personal connection. Like I went to Rancho, I was a kiddo there, and it just makes it kind of extra jarring. And there's sort of you have this expectation that you can trust your middle school teachers and you're safe there. And that's at least how it felt at the time. But now these developments kind of make me second guess. Like, was it that safe?
I mean, for true crime, I'm always more interested in the places that I grew up or I lived or I know, right? Because it's so personal. And for you to have actually walked these halls, done whatever middle school kids do, felt safe there, and then to see another student who has gone through something absolutely traumatic. I'm sure it's so jarring for you and our viewers because I'm sure we have viewers there too. So my first question to you is this a major abuse of power? Because if you look at the court documents, this teacher says, and the student reported too, they were having mental health struggles during this time in middle school. Like they were really struggling. Isn't the teacher supposed to be a mandated reporter rather than an alleged abuser?
It's a really important point. In reading the affidavit, it appears that the alleged victim was engaging in self-harm, a middle
Mhm.
schooler, and that's why we have people in a position of trust. That's why we have teachers who are adults who are supposed to recognize these red flags, for risks to that child's safety, and then report it, take action, try to protect that child. At least according to the allegations, this teacher did the exact opposite of that.
Which is so disturbing because middle school is such a difficult time for so many. I've said on this very show, seventh grade was the worst year of my life. And I'm not making fun of that at all. It was so hard because you're changing not only your body, probably your friend groups, mental health struggles for a lot of us. And that student had to come forward speaking with investigators and say, yeah, I was going through it. I was participating in self harm. Now, I'm wondering if your thoughts in all of this as a former prosecutor are that she just took advantage of him, saw that he was very vulnerable, and then began grooming him.
Oh gosh, that's what it appears from the allegations. Certainly, I mean, and one of the charges is sexual abuse in a position of trust, and so that kind of goes to the heart of what we're talking about. And I can't fathom what it was like for this kiddo because she was experiencing significant problems that are similar to a lot of problems middle schoolers experience. And then she gets victimized further, according to the allegations, traumatized further. She was already in a shaky spot. Now it's going to be much worse and could have lifelong implications for her.
Unfortunately, I've done multiple stories like this where we have a teacher who's abusing their position of power. Again, this is alleged at this point, but these are the allegations and the charges that we have. And I'm wondering about in Colorado if it's different based on the age of the victim, because I know sometimes the statutes are, I don't know, 0 to 5 or 6 to 16 or whatever. Does it matter that this victim at the time was in middle school?
There are different statutory schemes that criminalize different behavior based on different age ranges. For example, there's some kind of exception in Colorado. I don't have it in front of me, but whereby if the alleged perpetrator and the alleged victim are very close in age, that can be a lesser crime than if they are separated further in age. And so that is an issue. But what's been lodged here is really the most serious sexual assault allegation there is. Not only sexual assault on someone under 18, but from an individual in a position of trust. That makes it more aggravated. And certainly the age will be considered by the prosecutor in deciding how best to approach the case.
There's always that folklore, right, of an angry dad who's like, I want to prosecute this 18-year-old high school senior who's dating my 17-year-old daughter. People always talk about that. That is not what we have going on here. There was a 12-year age gap. This victim was in middle school at the time. And what was interesting, you mentioned the affidavit. It was one of the craziest affidavits I personally have read. And through it, the teacher, our defendant here, Teresa Whalin, described their relationship as dating, which I'm sorry, you can't be dating if they're under age 18. What are your thoughts about that she says that they were in a relationship?
Well, Sierra, I mean, by law, someone, generally speaking, under the age of 18 cannot consent to a romantic relationship with someone over 18. And so to have this fiction in her head that she was in some sort of dating relationship, like you and I would have as adults, but with a middle schooler, is just shocking, honestly. And there appear to be other distortions in the perpetrator's statements allegedly in the affidavit. It really seems like she was kind of living in a fantasy world and allegedly perpetrating on a young victim.
Okay, so let's walk through the timeline of their relationship. We know that the student was going through mental health issues, engaging in self harm. The teacher started having a relationship with them, and then it progressed outside of school because, according to the affidavit, this teacher would pick up the student, drive them to school, drive them home. It also sounds like there may have been a hint of consciousness of guilt in all of this because the teacher did not drop them off right in their driveway as you would for, your friend or whoever. It was kind of around the corner, a ways away, so that the students' parents didn't know about all of it. What are your thoughts about escalating it to something happening outside of school?
Well, it just shows how serious this got progressively over time. It's taken outside the school context, and now, at least in some of the alleged encounters, there isn't another adult around. At least inside the school, oftentimes there's a person to whom the alleged victim can outcry to, they can go to for help, they can literally run to if they need to.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but when we're outside of the school context, you're talking just this adult and this kid, and there's obviously a power differential there that is terribly concerning. And who knows what could have happened if this wasn't stopped when it stopped.
You're right. This student wouldn't be old enough to have a driver's license, number one, if they're in middle school. Then, if you're in an isolated area like a vehicle, the teacher in the front seat, the driver's seat, rather, the student in the passenger, you're in a moving vehicle, you're stuck there. And to and from school, who knows what sort of manipulation, again, alleged at this point, but what they were talking about, building a quote unquote relationship outside of the school. But then things escalated too. We have allegations here, the charges of the sexual assault. And this was kind of shocking to me reading in the affidavit that I guess some of these sexual encounters happened literally at the school. This was a middle school gym teacher who I guess had an office kind of near the bathrooms and locker room. And I guess some of the sexual encounters, according to the court documents, happened there at school. That to me is pretty brazen, if nothing else, for the teacher. What are your thoughts about that?
Gosh, Sierra, as unexpected as it may seem to you or me, I've seen multiple cases involving teachers and allegations of sexual misconduct within the doors of that school, which is just crazy to think about. I mean, there are other adults around, there are teachers, they're all mandatory reporters. We're at least assuming that they're going to do their job if they learn of concerning information. Here, the alleged perpetrator did not discharge her duties as mandatory reporter. But yeah, inside the school, where in the world is safe for this kid? This kid has to be there for hours on end every single school day, and so it's just must have felt like a prison for that person, I imagine.
I feel so bad for the student because I'm going through and thinking about, what it was like for me in middle school. And we did have to have gym class every other day. So if nothing else, they're seeing each other in class every single, week, multiple times, plus the driving to and from school, plus if there are these encounters in the locker room, office type area. And I'm wondering about the teacher here. I mean, why risk it, so to speak? You talked about that. I mean, there are students everywhere. They fill the middle school, obviously. Not to mention, there are dozens of teachers, adults, who I'm very confident if an adult walked in would say, okay, something's wrong. We're calling police immediately. We got to figure this out. So why take such a risk for the defendant?
My read on it, Sierra, and I used to be a prosecutor in the Special Victims Unit here in Colorado. And so I've seen these cases, I've seen patterns emerge. One thing that jumps out to me is just how obsessed it appears this alleged perpetrator was with her minor victim, with a student at her middle school. There are other allegations of obsessive contact with this kid even after the relationship dissolved. And so it seemed like the defendant here just was so dead set on pursuing this relationship in an obsessive fashion that perhaps the normal concerns of reality did not pervade her thinking.
Okay, you talked about the relationship ending, the breakup, and that's literally what it says in the court documents, breakup with quotation marks around it, because once again, we've established there could be no consensual relationship here because we have a teacher, number one, position of power, number two, over the age of 18. But whatever, for the sake of this, we're going to call it a breakup. It's interesting to me because the student broke up with the teacher, so to speak, by saying, I want to date someone who's my own age. I have a crush, or I want to be with this person who's my peer, another student. And it seems that the teacher, according to the court documents, struggled with the breakup. That to me seems, honestly, I'm just going to say it, it's unhinged. So could that lean toward maybe a mental health defense for her, the fact that she thought she was in this relationship with a student and then is taking it hard following the student after all of this? I mean, what are your thoughts with that?
It's hard to wrap your head around a little bit. It's hard to think how a logical, clear-headed person could come to the conclusion that they were dating a middle schooler, and that the breakup, they were struggling with that emotionally because of their perceived romantic connection with this kid. Hard to wrap your head around. Certainly her defense has to explore any kind of health issues that could have been going on, and how those could have influenced or contributed to the alleged facts in this case. But I don't see anything glaring like, that she had schizophrenia or something and was,
Right.
hallucinating and having delusions that this person was actually into her. It seems more just sort of like distorted thinking and perhaps sexually deviant mindset, at least according to the allegations.
I mean, everyone watching, listening, I'm sure has had a breakup, and they're not always super smooth. Sometimes they're a little bit rocky, but this, it seems, took it to another level because according to the court documents, the defendant here was essentially stalking the student, showing up unannounced on their route to and from school, making up fake phone numbers to text the student. I mean, does that go to the stalking allegation here?
Oh, 100%. And that's a real red flag. And it's in the family violence and special victims unit contexts, and domestic violence context. Stalking can be a lethality factor. That is something where things have escalated to a level that is very dangerous. And we were always taught as prosecutors, hey, if you see stalking conduct, you got to keep your eye on that person. You got to be vigilant because they might take it to the next level. The allegations include repeated contact telephonically, including perhaps adopting some kind of fake number and sending her fake text messages. And on top of that, repeatedly trying to go to her home to catch a glimpse of this child with whom the perpetrator thought she had a relationship, allegedly.
Okay, you took that right out of the affidavit, the catching a glimpse. And I mean, honestly, let me be real here on Scandal. In high school, me and my friends would drive to and from our crushes' houses just to catch a glimpse, literally, to do. We were in high school. We had a crush. That's what it was. This absolutely different. To catch a glimpse at a middle schooler and you're the teacher after this breakup is just, it's wild to me. Now we know that authorities eventually were able to track her down based on the student reporting it. Thankfully, she met with them and discussed, and she pretty much admitted it. According to the court documents, she said she knew that it was wrong. Is that going to be hard for her to defend? She even said something, I deserve to be in jail for what I've done. I mean, with that sort of admission there, I mean, how is she going to defend it?
Gonna be a very serious uphill battle for her defense counsel with that confession. Now, there are some potential legal issues with respect to that confession. My understanding is that when the police went to the home, there was a statement that she needed an attorney and didn't want to talk with police. Allegedly, she reinitiated contact with police at the jail to do the interview. That point is critical, and that has to be true in order for the confession to be admissible. But if it is, my gosh, what kind of outs are there? You got to explore mental health. You don't have a consent defense because a child can't consent. And then on top of that, you kind of incriminated yourself by making the entire confession. And so things are looking very grim, I think, for this defendant. Not a ton of legal outs that jump out at me.
A good defense attorney is going to do what you said and go through and make sure, okay, we got the Miranda rights, everything, this statement was taken correctly and everything's good. But to your point, if everything is, buttoned up, what is she going to say? What are we going to do? And that leads into my last question. What happens then? Do you think a plea deal? Because what I personally always think in these cases is, and I'm sure you thought of this as a prosecutor too, is to re-victimize the student by having to put them on the stand, because they would be, the star witness here, right? To talk about this so-called relationship, the sexual encounters that they had, everything. I mean, I know that we have text messages and allegedly explicit photos, but the testimony from the student would be paramount. However, again, re-victimization there. So what do you think? Is that something prosecutors would consider, going for a plea deal rather than putting this kid up on the stand?
I think there are several considerations from a prosecutorial standpoint. One is they need to continue investigating, and I'm sure they are, whether this alleged perpetrator has done this to any other kids.
Right.
This was very involved conduct, brazen, like you said, happening within the school, happening on the phone, happening at this alleged victim's house, happening in the alleged perpetrator's car. And so, my gosh, has she taken this to such a level with any other child? You got to look into that. That could be aggravating. That could affect how the case turns out. Also, like you said, you don't want to re-traumatize the victim. This victim was already going through a whole lot in terms of self-harm, in terms of mental health issues. Having to go through the crucible of a trial could be difficult due to the fact that there's a confession. I think there's probably some traction there for some kind of plea agreement. Now, it's probably going to involve prison. It's probably going to be very serious. She's probably going to lose her teaching license. But perhaps that's appropriate if these allegations are true.
I mean, if the allegations are true and she's convicted of that, I do feel like that would be appropriate then, that she shouldn't be around other students. And to your point, what if there are other student victims out there? I hope that there aren't. But again, we're still in the early stages of this case, so we'll keep following it and see where it heads. Eric Faddis, thank you so much for coming on today and giving us your insight.
Great to be with you.
Before we wrap up today's episode of Scandal, I want to note the response from Ranch View Middle School. Officials there say they are being cooperative with the investigation, and according to local TV station Denver 7, they've released a small statement. It reads in part, quote, "We are working to find a long-term substitute teacher for our impacted students. In the meantime, the entire Ranch View Middle School administrative team will support our students and ensure learning continues." Meanwhile, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office asks that anyone with more information or anyone who may have been involved in all of this contact their office. And that is where today's scandal leaves us for now. For all of the updates in this case and all things true crime, make sure to subscribe to our channel. To contact our tip line, you can send us messages, scandal@lawandcrime.com. And if you want to follow me personally, you can find me on social media like Instagram @Sierra Gillespie. And if you like what I'm wearing, you can have a matching outfit of your own. On Wednesdays, we always wear true crime goods, and you can have it too. Today's is this In My True Crime Era t-shirt. And again, you can have a matching one of your own. All you have to do is visit the link that is pinned in the comments. And don't forget to do this, you guys. Make sure to use the code SCANDAL for your first purchase at True Crime Goods. You're going to get 15% off. So make sure to try it out. Thanks for watching today's episode of Scandal. As always, I'm your host, Sierra Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.